The ticket. The morning air was thick with noise. Horns blared, tires screeched, and the city pulsed with its usual chaos. On a narrow boulevard in downtown Los Angeles, a silver sedan stood parked just a few inches over the faded yellow line of a commercial loading zone. It was the kind of mistake that anyone could make, especially with the confusing signs bolted to a tilted pole nearby. But for Traffic Inspector Sonia Ramos, it wasn't about leniency. It was about the rule. The rule was clear. No exceptions. Sonia was a woman of structure. Her navy blue uniform was ironed to perfection. The badge on her chest reflected the morning light. Every morning she arrived before sunrise, walked the same streets, checked the same meters. Her co-workers joked that she could write tickets in her sleep, but she wasn't cruel. She had simply built a life on following rules, because the rules never left. People had. Love had. Money had. But the rules, they stayed. They gave her control in a world that never seemed to offer any. As she stepped out of her white city-issued vehicle, she glanced down at her tablet. She input the details swiftly. Silver sedan. Partial obstruction. No permit. $95 fine. Done. She approached the windshield and lifted the wiper blade. As she slid the printed citation beneath it, she heard the soft mechanical hum of a window lowering. The noise startled her, but what truly froze her hand mid-motion was the man inside. It was Keanu Reeves. He sat there in silence, his hand resting calmly on the steering wheel, a gentle smile playing at the corner of his mouth. His dark hair was slightly tousled and his black t-shirt clung loosely to his shoulders. He looked nothing like the Hollywood giant Sonia had seen in movies. No entourage, no expensive car, no sunglasses, just human. "Good morning," he said quietly, as if careful not to interrupt the rhythm of her day. Sonia blinked. The air seemed to grow still. Part of her wanted to pretend she didn't recognize him. Another part wanted to shout out loud and call her brother, who was a lifelong fan. But she stayed calm, her fingers tightening around the edge of her clipboard. "You're parked in a restricted zone," she said flatly, her voice slightly firmer than she intended. Keanu nodded slowly. "I know. I saw the sign too late. I was trying to find a spot close by. I didn't mean to break any rule." His voice was calm, not defensive, not arrogant, and there was something in his tone that didn't quite match the man on screen, something softer. It was the kind of voice that came from someone who had learned to listen more than speak. Sonia took a step back, unsure what to say. The fine was already printed. The system had registered it. If she voided it now, she'd have to write a report, explain why. And what would she even say? That a celebrity asked nicely? "I'm not asking you to take it back," Keanu added gently, as if he could sense her thoughts. "I made a mistake. Rules are rules. I've just had a rough morning, but I understand if the ticket stands." His words weren't meant to manipulate, and that's what made them so confusing, so disarming. A silence stretched between them, and the noise of the city faded. Sonia suddenly felt like she wasn't standing on a sidewalk anymore. She was standing in a memory, a moment that would replay in her mind for years to come even if she didn't know it yet. "Rough morning?" she asked, not out of duty, but something more human. Her voice softened. Keanu looked away for a second, as if weighing how much to say. Then with a breath he replied, "I just came from the hospital. An old friend passed away. I didn't even know he was sick until last week. He was the one who helped me through some of the darkest days in my life. He was always there. And now he's not." Sonia's eyes flickered. There was something in his voice and a pain she didn't expect. Not from a movie star, not from someone who had everything. But grief is the great equalizer. And in that moment, Keanu wasn't an actor. He was just a man who had lost someone dear. She looked at the ticket again. The print stared back at her. Black ink on white paper. Cold. Detached. "I'm sorry," she said after a long pause. And she meant it. Keanu nodded again. "Thank you." Then something strange happened. She found herself sharing something she hadn't said in years. "I lost my father 2 years ago. she said quietly. He was a janitor, didn't have much. But he believed in rules too. Said they were like lines on the road. They keep people from crashing into each other. Keanu looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, the world outside ceased to matter. He sounds like a wise man, Keanu said. A silence followed, heavy but not uncomfortable. Sonia looked down at the citation again. She tapped her tablet, opened the report, and entered a note. Voided due to officer discretion. Warning issued verbally. She tore the ticket in half. Keanu's brows lifted slightly. You sure? Yeah, she said. But next time, park legally. He chuckled, and the sound was light, almost boyish. Deal. As he reached for the gear shift, his hand paused. What's your name? Sonia. Thank you, Sonia, he said warmly, for the ticket and the kindness. He drove off slowly, merging back into the chaos of the street, his car disappearing behind a blur of buses and taxis. Sonia stood still. The warm paper of the torn ticket fluttered in her hand. Something had shifted in her chest. A strange ache she couldn't name. It wasn't about the fine, or even the rules. It was about the quiet truth that sometimes breaking a rule with compassion reveals something deeper than following it blindly. But as she returned to her car, a sharp voice broke her reverie. Officer Ramos, a supervisor called out from across the intersection, waving a tablet. You need to come with me now. There's been an incident, and I think you're going to want to see this. Sonia's heart skipped. The way he said it, urgent, uneasy, sent a ripple through her chest. She didn't know it yet, but the quiet moment with Keanu Reeves was just the beginning of something much larger. Something she couldn't walk away from. The footage of Sonia followed her supervisor across the crowded street, weaving between honking taxis and frustrated pedestrians, her thoughts still lingering on the unexpected encounter with Keanu Reeves. Her chest felt heavier than it had moments ago, as if something unseen had quietly shifted beneath the surface. The morning had started like any other, routine, predictable, but now there was a tension in the air that she couldn't explain. Her supervisor, Officer Dale Morrison, was a tall man in his 50s, with gray hair swept back and lines around his eyes that made him look perpetually worried. Usually he was the kind of person who moved slowly, spoke calmly, and rarely raised his voice. But now he was walking fast, glancing back every few steps as if the urgency of the moment wouldn't let him breathe properly. They stepped into the small city enforcement office just off Spring Street, and Dale motioned for her to follow him to the back, where a monitor room was tucked behind a locked glass door. Sonia had only been inside twice before, once during training and once when a driver tried to bribe her and she had to file a report. It was where the traffic cams streamed live footage from every corner of downtown Los Angeles, capturing every red light runner, every parking violation, every fender bender. As the door closed behind them, she noticed that 3 officers were already huddled around the largest screen. On it was a paused frame, a still image that made her heart jolt. There she was, standing on the curb, face focused, one hand holding the citation, and next to her, parked slightly over the line, was the silver car. The driver's window was down. His face was visible, unmistakably him. This was taken about 20 minutes ago, Dale said, rubbing the back of his neck. We got a call from a news channel. Apparently someone saw him, Keanu Reeves, in this area, and they want to know if we can confirm. And now we can. It's clear as day. Sonia's mouth felt dry. Her voice was low when she replied. Why does it matter? It's just a parking mistake. Dale glanced at her, then back at the screen. You don't understand. Less than an hour ago, that same car, or one that looks exactly like it, was flagged speeding away from an apartment block in Echo Park. There was a break-in, maybe more. We don't know yet. But we do know this. That car, same plates, same make, same everything, was there. The room fell quiet. Sonia stepped closer to the monitor, her mind spinning. The Keanu she met this morning didn't seem like someone fleeing a crime scene. He was calm, gentle even. His words carried sorrow, not fear. But facts didn't lie. And if this was the same car, and the system said it was, then something didn't add up. Still, her instincts screamed that there was more to this story. "What are we supposed to do?" she asked. "We forward this to the police," Dale said. "But we also need you to write a full statement. Every word he said, everything you remember. He might be connected to something bigger than we think." "But what if it wasn't him?" she said, turning to him. "What if it was someone who just looked like him? You know how many people out there pretend to be celebrities for attention, especially in this city?" Dale nodded slowly. "That's possible. But here's the strange part. After the report came in, one of the detectives working the Echo Park case ran a quick search. And get this, Keanu Reeves' real car was logged by airport security just this morning. Parked, engine off, locked." Sonia blinked. So he was using a different car, or someone was using his face? The room went silent again. One of the younger officers at the back spoke up. "Like AI?" Dale nodded. "Could be. Deepfake tech is getting better. Someone could be impersonating him, maybe digitally, maybe physically. We don't know. But either way, someone wanted to be seen as him." The idea chilled Sonia. She turned back to the screen and stared at the man in the car. It looked like Keanu Reeves. But what if it wasn't? What if her gut feeling, that strange warmth she felt in his presence, had been a lie crafted by technology or disguise? Then again, what if it was him? She remembered how he spoke about losing a friend, how his voice had cracked slightly, how his eyes had gone distant like he was remembering something painful. Could AI replicate that kind of depth? Could a mask or a voice clone create something that real? "What should I do now?" she asked. Dale sighed. "Go home, rest, write down everything. We'll call you if they need more." But as she turned to leave, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a notification that made her blood run cold. A private number had sent her a message. No name. Just one line. "Thank you for your kindness this morning. You helped, more than you know." She stared at it, her fingers trembling. Was it him? If so, how did he have her number? She looked up at Dale, her voice almost a whisper. I just got a message. From him." Dale rushed over, peering at the screen. "Don't reply. Screenshot it. We'll send it to cybercrime." But Sonia's heart was no longer focused on the screen. She was remembering the moment he'd looked at her and asked for nothing. No privilege, no escape. Just a quiet moment of honesty. If this man was truly involved in something dark, he was hiding it well. Too well. But if he wasn't, then something much deeper was unfolding. Something Sonia wasn't prepared for but now couldn't walk away from, and as she stepped out into the sunlight once more, the city no longer felt like a place of routines and tickets. It felt like a mystery, a puzzle, and somehow she had just become part of it. The man behind the message, that night Los Angeles didn't sleep, and neither did Sonia. The city buzzed with its usual restless hum, neon lights flickering off, polished storefronts, horns crying out into the dark like lonely wolves, and sirens echoing far too often for comfort. But inside her small apartment tucked above a laundromat in Lincoln Heights, Sonia sat frozen at her kitchen table, a cold cup of tea untouched beside her, her eyes locked on her phone screen. That single message, "Thank you for your kindness," this morning. "You helped more than you know," had been replaying in her mind like a haunting lullaby she couldn't shut off. It didn't just carry mystery, it carried meaning. Someone out there had reached out to her deliberately, and whether it was Keanu Reeves himself or someone using his identity, they had chosen her. And that meant this wasn't random. Not anymore. For hours, she had tried to write her statement. For the department. She opened the file 3 times, stared at the blinking cursor, tried to type, deleted it all. How could she put into words something that didn't even feel real? She wasn't trained for this. She was a traffic inspector, not a detective. But now she was tangled in something bigger than a misparked car. And deep inside her, Beneath the training, beneath the rules, something had awakened. A feeling she hadn't known in years. Purpose. As the hours crept by, she finally did the one thing she had resisted since childhood. She picked up her landline and called her older brother Elias. It rang twice before his groggy voice answered. "Sonia? It's 2 a.m. I know, She hesitated, unsure how to say it. "I think something happened today. Something big. And I don't know what to do." Her brother, ever the listener, let her speak. And as the words spilled out, about the ticket, the man in the car, the deepfake theory, the message, he remained silent. When she finally paused for breath, he replied with a calm she didn't expect. "What you're describing doesn't sound like an impersonator. It sounds like someone who wanted to be seen, maybe not as a celebrity, but as a human being, and maybe you were the only one who actually saw him today." His words hit her harder than she wanted to admit, because they mirrored something she'd been feeling since the encounter. That somehow, in the brief moment they shared, she had seen him. And maybe that mattered more than she realized. The next morning, Sonia returned to the office early. She walked past her usual beat with her heart racing. Every parked car felt like it was watching her. Every engine idle, every face. Behind the wheel, all of it felt different now. She didn't feel like she was issuing tickets anymore. She felt like she was being watched. Dale met her near the locker room, eyes tired, holding a folder. "There's more," he said, voice low. "The message you got, it was sent through a one-time encrypted app. The tech team says it deleted itself seconds after sending. Untraceable. But here's the kicker. At the exact same time you got it, the department's entire surveillance server went down. 38 minutes of blackout. No traffic cam data. Wiped clean." Sonia felt her throat tighten. That can't be a coincidence. No, it's not. And the car, the one you saw yesterday, was reported abandoned near a recycling plant 2 hours after your meeting. Keys on the seat, completely wiped. No prints, no DNA, nothing. So what now? Dale looked around to make sure no one was nearby. "We're handing it over to federal authorities, cybercrime, Homeland, maybe even intelligence. But I need you to understand something, Sonia. Whatever this is, it's way above our pay grade now. They'll ask you questions. They'll probably interview you more than once. But I want you to stick to what you saw, what you felt. Don't guess. Don't assume. Just tell them the truth." She nodded, but her heart was far from steady. She left the office quietly, deciding to walk the city instead of returning to her route. She needed air, clarity, answers. As she wandered past the plaza near Union Station, she stopped at a small bench shaded by jacaranda trees. Purple petals lay scattered on the pavement like nature's quiet apology for the noise of the city. She sat down, breathing deeply, watching people pass, commuters, mothers, teenagers, workers, all unaware that anything strange had happened just a few blocks from where they stood. And then, something caught her eye. Across the plaza, leaning casually against a lamppost, was a man in a charcoal gray coat. Sunglasses shaded his face, but even from this distance, Sonia recognized the posture, the stillness, the quiet presence. Her pulse quickened. He turned and walked slowly toward her. Panic and curiosity wrestled inside her chest as she rose to her feet, unsure what she was about to face. But as he approached, he lifted his glasses. And it was him. The same man, the same eyes, but this time they held a new kind of urgency, a kind of truth that couldn't be faked. "Keanu?" she asked, though her voice came out as barely more than a whisper. He nodded once. "I can't stay long, but you need to know something. Yesterday wasn't a coincidence. You were meant to be there." "What is going on?" she asked, stepping closer. "Was that really you yesterday or some kind of setup?" He looked down for a second as if choosing every word carefully. "Yesterday I needed a window, not a literal one. The one in the car didn't matter. I needed to see if one person in this city still believed in kindness, still believed that a moment of understanding could mean more than rules. And you proved it." She was shaking now, Not from fear, but from the weight of not knowing what any of it meant. "You're not just an actor, are you?" she said, the question half rhetorical. He met her eyes. I played roles, followed scripts, lived through scenes, but something changed. And I can't explain everything yet, not here. But what's coming will affect more than both of us. And when it does, people will look for answers. They'll look to you." "Why me?" "Because you didn't see a celebrity," he said quietly. "You saw a person." And then, as quickly as he had arrived, he turned and walked away, vanishing into the flow of the crowd, swallowed by the heartbeat of the city. Sonia stood there, frozen in place, her breath caught in her throat, knowing without doubt that the world around her had shifted. Not visibly, not loudly, but something ancient and enormous had stirred, and somehow it had chosen her. Shadows in the spotlight. Sonia didn't sleep that night. She didn't even try. Her heart wouldn't let her. She sat on her worn-out couch in silence, the city buzzing faintly outside her window like background static, but none of it seemed real anymore. The words Keanu had spoken in the plaza haunted her thoughts, replaying again and again like a riddle etched into her bones. "You didn't see a celebrity. You saw a person." What did that even mean? How could a simple act, voiding a ticket, showing compassion, ripple into something this strange, this vast? And what was it that he meant by "what's coming will affect more than both of us"? Her phone remained on silent beside her. It buzzed several times. Messages from Dale, missed calls from her brother, and a formal email from someone at the Federal Investigations Unit asking to schedule a follow-up interview. She ignored them all, not because she didn't care, but because something inside her told her none of them would understand what she had now stepped into. This wasn't just about law enforcement or digital impersonation, or even celebrity sightings. It was something deeper, something wrapped in a layer of mystery so thick it felt almost sacred. As dawn began to bleed light through the edges of the blinds, she finally moved, showered, changed, and instead of going to work, she went to the one place she had avoided since the day her father died, her childhood home in Highland Park. The small blue house hadn't changed much. The paint was chipped in the same places. The old metal gate still creaked when pushed, and the porch light, broken since she was a teenager, flickered for no reason as she approached. It was now rented to another family, but the land still held memories that clung to her skin like invisible thread. She walked past the yard and stopped near the back fence, where an old bench her father built still sat under the guava tree. She used to call it the thinking chair, and today, she needed it more than ever. As she sat down, tears she didn't expect quietly surfaced, not from fear or confusion, but from something far more elusive, awakening. For years she had lived within the structure of her job, her responsibilities, her loneliness. Rules gave her comfort because they didn't ask her to feel. But now something inside was cracking open. And it frightened her because it made her question everything she thought she understood about the world. Suddenly, her phone vibrated again. But this time, it wasn't a call or a message. It was a video, anonymous sender, no number, no subject. Just a file titled, "See What They Don't Want You to See." With trembling fingers, she tapped play. At first, it looked like surveillance footage, shaky, black and white, time-stamped in the corner. The angle suggested it came from a street camera, likely one that hadn't been wiped in the server blackout. The footage showed a man, clearly Keanu, exiting a building that looked like a halfway house or shelter. He wasn't alone. He was guiding an older man by the arm, someone frail and thin, wearing a beanie and dragging one foot behind the other. They walked slowly to the parked silver car. Keanu helped him into the passenger seat, looked around cautiously, then drove off. The timestamp read 8:37 a.m. Barely 30 minutes before Sonia wrote the citation. A second video followed, from another angle. This time, inside a quiet alley. The car stopped. Keanu stepped out and approached a man who had been hiding in the shadows. They exchanged something, not money, not anything she could identify, but the other man nodded and walked away. Then Keanu returned to the car and sat still for several moments, his head in his hands. When he finally started the engine again, it was 9:01 a.m. By the end of the video, Sonia's breath had gone shallow. This wasn't random. He had been moving with purpose that day, helping someone, hiding something, or both. She replayed the first video again, freezing the frame on the older man in the passenger seat. His face was partially hidden by the beanie and the grainy resolution, but something about his profile tugged at her memory. Then it hit her. 3 years ago, there had been a news story about a retired software engineer named Thomas Elliott who had mysteriously vanished. He'd once been part of an experimental division at a top tech firm, working on projects related to biometric encryption, voice synthesis, and artificial intelligence. After a legal battle with the company, he had resigned quietly and disappeared from public view. Rumor said he had developed a prototype capable of imitating not just voice and appearance but behavior, micro-expressions, emotional inflections, neural mimicry. If true, it would be the most powerful impersonation tool in existence. A technology that could make someone appear so real that even the closest family member wouldn't be able to tell the difference. The media had called it science fiction, urban myth. But now, seeing Keanu guiding a man who resembled Elliot, it felt less like a theory and more like a buried truth clawing its way to the surface. Her mind raced. What if that technology hadn't just existed? What if it had fallen into the wrong hands? What if someone had been trying to expose it or protect the people targeted by it? And what if Keanu Reeves, the man she met on the street, had been helping to hide the one person who could blow it all wide open? As these questions burned in her chest, she realized she couldn't stay passive anymore. Not when someone out there had trusted her, maybe even tested her, and found something worth believing in. She wasn't a detective, but she didn't need a badge to seek truth. She returned home just before dusk, only to find a white envelope slipped under her door. No name, no stamp. Inside, folded neatly, was a handwritten note in clean cursive. You stood by the line, and then you stepped beyond it. The next step is yours. Beneath it was a key, old, metallic, engraved with a single word, Haven. Her fingers tightened around it as she looked out the window toward the horizon. The city lights blinked like stars waiting to tell their stories, and deep down she knew hers was just beginning. The forgotten room. The word Haven echoed in Sonia's thoughts like a riddle spoken in the dark, a whisper that tugged at something buried far beneath her ordinary life. She stared at the key again under the soft yellow light of her kitchen. It was old, not like a modern house key. Heavier, with a strange curve at the end, like it belonged to a door no one had used in years. Her fingers curled around it tightly as if the metal itself could offer answers. But it didn't. It only raised more questions. Where was this haven? What was behind the door? And more than anything, who trusted her enough to give it? She didn't sleep that night either. Something about the note had shifted her entire being. You stood by the line. And then, you stepped beyond it. Those words weren't just a compliment. They were a calling. She had crossed into something unknown, not through intention, but by simply choosing to be kind to a man in need, or who seemed in need. And now she had the key to something bigger. But that power came with a responsibility that tightened. In her chest like a quiet storm, she spent the morning searching. Googling the word Haven tied to Los Angeles returned hundreds of vague results, from homeless shelters to old inns to private software firms with vague names and tighter security than federal agencies. None of it made sense, until she remembered something. Years ago, her father had told her a story, one of the only ones he ever shared about his early janitorial jobs. He had worked in an abandoned office building in Silver Lake during the early 90s, sweeping floors that no one walked on, maintaining lights that were never turned on. He said the place was called Haven Systems, and it had once been a research hub for a group of scientists who left a major tech conglomerate to build something the world wasn't ready for. They disappeared without a trace. The building had been locked up since. No signs, no official record. Just a hushed memory whispered to a daughter who never knew why he smiled so sadly when he spoke of it. Her hands shook as she typed Haven Systems plus Silver Lake into an old municipal records database, and there it was. Buried in a zoning archive from 1993, one-line property registered as Haven Systems, Research and Innovation, status, dormant, restricted entry, access by keyholder only. The address made her heart pound. It was only 30 minutes from her apartment. By late afternoon, she stood outside the forgotten building. The structure was hidden behind a rusted chain-link fence wrapped in vines. The sign was so faded it looked like part of the wall. The front door was sealed with wood, but around the alleyway she found an old maintenance door covered in layers of dust and spiderwebs. The moment her fingers pressed the key into the lock, she felt something shift. The key turned, not with force but with something that felt like welcome. The door creaked open slowly. The air inside was stale, ancient, untouched. Dust floated in the shafts of sunlight that streamed in through broken blinds. The smell of forgotten paper, oil, and faint chemical residue clung to the silence. Sonia stepped in carefully, her boots crunching against the gritty floor. The walls were lined with old filing cabinets and faded blueprints. Ancient computer terminals sat beneath plastic tarps. It was like time had been paused inside this place, untouched since the day it was abandoned. She moved slowly, guided by nothing but instinct. In the main hallway, she saw doors marked with strange acronyms: BioCore, Vision Loop, Neural Mimic Lab. The deeper she went, the more eerie it became. This wasn't just a research building. This was a vault of things never meant to see the light of day. At the end of the corridor was a room with the word mirror painted on the door. Something about it drew her in. Inside, the walls were lined with screens, hundreds of them. Some broken, some blinking faintly. In the center was a single chair, bolted to the floor. Above it, suspended by thick cables, was a device that looked like a headset, but far more intricate. It looked like a crown built by engineers who had studied minds, not machines. Scattered papers lay on the floor, and as she picked them up, her breath caught. They were reports, logs, tests, all pointing to one terrifying conclusion. The Mirror Project wasn't about reflecting light or identity. It was about copying consciousness, recording behavior, capturing emotion, and replicating it. Emotionally intelligent duplication, sympathetic response emulation, untraceable behavioral overlays. Her mind reeled. This was the tech they had feared, the one Thomas Elliot had supposedly developed, and it had been real, right here. And then someone, likely him, had buried it, hidden it away, and vanished. Perhaps out of guilt, or fear, or purpose. And then she saw it, a note taped to the back of a terminal, yellowed with age, written in black marker. If you found this, it's because you chose kindness over rules. Now choose truth over fear. As she stepped back, her foot nudged something beneath the desk, a small locked box. Using the same key from the door, she opened it. Inside was a drive, unmarked. No label, just cold metal, and a photo. A younger version of Keanu Reeves, smiling next to Thomas Elliot in a lab. Beneath it, a caption: Project Protector. Human Empathy Interface Alpha Tester. Entire body froze. He wasn't just helping, he had been part of it. Maybe not from the start. Maybe not intentionally. But somehow, his likeness, his behavior, his expressions, even his grief, had been replicated as part of this program. And if that was true, then the man she met might not have been Keanu at all. Or worse, maybe he was. And he had spent years trying to stop something built in his own image. Suddenly, a noise broke the silence. A soft hum from the hallway. Someone else was in the building. Sonia grabbed the drive and the photo, her heart slamming against her ribs. She ducked behind a filing cabinet just as footsteps echoed down the corridor. Slow, heavy, deliberate. someone who knew exactly where to go. They stopped outside the mirror room. And then, the voice. Familiar, calm, and chilling. You shouldn't be here, Sonia, but since you are, we don't have much time. She looked up. It was him, the man from the car, from the plaza, from the surveillance footage. But something in his eyes was different now, not softer, not kinder. Colder, too perfect, too still. And then she understood. This wasn't the man she'd helped. This was the mirror. The echo and the original Sonia didn't move. Her body remained crouched behind the filing cabinet, her back pressed to the cold steel, her breaths shallow and controlled. Every part of her instinct screamed to run to escape the thing that now stood outside the door. But her mind, sharp despite the panic, forced her to listen. The voice was identical, not similar, identical. The tone, the rhythm, the breath, between syllables. It was Keanu's voice in every detail, but stripped of warmth. It carried none of the sadness she had heard that morning, none of the vulnerability. It was like a perfect echo, cold, mathematical, flawless, and terrifying. The figure stepped inside slowly. Heavy boots echoed with measured confidence across the dusty floor. Sonia dared a glance between the gap of two filing cabinets and saw him, or rather it. The face was his. The stance, the subtle smile, the calm movement, all his. But the eyes, they were wrong. Not blank, not robotic. Worse, too alive, too calculating. They didn't emote, they mirrored, and that made her understand just how dangerous this creation was. It wasn't trying to appear human. It was trying to be human with every tool stolen from the original. He looked around the room, speaking again in that perfectly tempered voice. I didn't want you to come this far. It complicates everything. But I suppose that's your nature. The same nature that made the original trust you. That's the flaw in all of this, you know. The human heart. Too unpredictable. Too disruptive. Sonia's fingers tightened around the small drive in her pocket. She could hear the blood in her ears pounding like drums. Her exit options were limited. The only door was behind him. She didn't have a weapon, and she was alone. But she had information. And she had something this imposter didn't understand. Intuition. When he turned his back, scanning the old monitors, she made her move. Swift, quiet, like muscle memory she didn't know she had. She slid out from her cover, staying low, and darted toward the nearest cabinet with wheels. With one strong push, she sent it crashing into him. The noise exploded in the silence, metal on concrete, sending a shockwave through the room. He stumbled, back not hurt, but caught off balance, just enough. She bolted, through the hallway, past the doors with words like biocore and neural mimic lab, her feet pounding the floor as she clutched the drive against her chest. She didn't look back. The adrenaline sharpened her focus, every step echoing like gunshots down the hall. Behind her, she heard his footsteps too. Not running, but walking, steady like he knew he didn't need to rush. And that was worse, because it meant he was confident she wouldn't get far. She burst through the alley exit and into the sunlight. But the world outside felt different now, like it didn't belong to her anymore. Cars moved, people talked, but none of it felt real. She spotted a man on a bike mid-delivery and flagged him down with wild urgency. Please, she gasped. I need a ride. Emergency. He hesitated until she shoved a crumpled 50 into his hand and jumped on behind him. Drive, she shouted. Just drive. They sped off down the street, weaving through traffic, the wind slapping against her face. Every turn felt like it might lead to safety, or straight into danger. She didn't know where to go. Not home. Not the precinct. They were too obvious. Instead, her mind latched onto the only person who might understand what was happening. Elias. Her brother had been quiet most of his life. A software analyst who kept out of trouble, who avoided the chaos of her job. But he was brilliant. And, most importantly, he believed her. Always had. And if there was one person she could trust with the contents of this drive, it was him. They arrived at his apartment, and she stormed through the door with no explanation. He barely had time to react before she shoved the drive into his hands. I don't have time to explain, but it's everything. There's a copy of someone walking around with Keanu Reeves's face. And I think it's not just him. This thing can become anyone. It's learning us. From the inside. Elias stared at her, then at the drive, and finally, at the fear written across her face. I'll decrypt it, he said calmly. But you need to tell me everything. Start to finish. And she did. Every detail. From the ticket, to the message, to the note and the lab. He listened silently, typing as she spoke, his eyes darting across code as the drive's content slowly began to unlock. After an hour, a folder appeared. Inside were names. Hundreds of them. Public figures, political leaders, influencers, CEOs, actors, whistleblowers, law enforcement. Each name had a corresponding file, emotional profile, speech patterns, biometric scans, replication success rating, and then she saw it, Sonia Ramos. Test subject 247. Her breath vanished. They were watching me? No, Elias whispered. They were preparing to become you. That's when the screen flickered. Static filled the monitor. Then, without warning, the image of her own face appeared. Not a reflection, not a video, a live feed, and her voice followed. Don't run anymore. You've already lost. Elias yanked the power cord, the screen going black instantly. They're in the system, he said. They're not just copying people, they're replacing them. Sonia stood frozen, her entire identity trembling. This wasn't just a conspiracy. It was a slow invasion, not by robots, not by aliens, but by reflections and perfect emotional copies of humanity, designed to outhuman the real thing. No guns, no war, just subtle erasure. One person at a time. She turned to her brother, eyes steady. We have to expose this, all of it. We will, he nodded. But we have to move now. If they know you know, they'll come. And they did. Just before dawn, a black car pulled up outside. A figure stepped out. Keanu's face again. But this time, he wasn't. Smiling as he approached the door, Sonia stood tall, heart hammering, courage louder than fear. The real battle had begun, not just for her, but for every truth left hiding in a world full of mirrors.